Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The God who knows our hearts. There is a concept, an ancient, powerful, and deeply unsettling concept that we must contend with if we are to live in truth. It is the idea that there is a God who knows our hearts, not just our words, not just our actions, but the very depths of our being. Be truly known is one of the most unsettling realities a person can face. We navigate the world carefully crafting an image of ourselves that we present to others, hoping they will see us in the best possible light. We select our words with precision, we tailor our actions to fit social expectations, and we suppress the aspects of ourselves that might invite criticism or rejection. The idea that someone or something could see through this carefully constructed facade right into the deepest recesses of our being is deeply discomforting. This discomfort stems from the realization that within each of us lies a complexity that is not always virtuous. We harbor thoughts that we would never speak aloud. We experience resentments, envy, and bitterness that we struggle to admit even to ourselves. We engage in rationalizations, convincing ourselves that our shortcomings are justified, that our failures are the result of external circumstances, that we are somehow victims of fate rather than agents of our own destiny. And yet, even with all these justifications, there is an undeniable awareness within us that we are not always as good as we claim to be. This is why so much of human interaction is built upon the maintenance of appearances. People fear rejection. They fear judgment. They fear that if others saw them their raw, unfiltered reality, they would be cast aside, deemed unworthy, unloved. And so they construct layers of defense mechanisms designed not only to protect them from external scrutiny, but also to shield them from their own self-awareness. They avoid silence, filling every moment with distraction. They resist introspection, drowning their minds in endless streams of entertainment, work, or trivial pursuits. They seek validation in social circles, in status and achievement, hoping that external affirmation will compensate for the internal unease that never quite goes away. But none of these defenses change the fundamental reality that the self cannot be fully hidden. Even if one manages to deceive others, the deeper truths about who they are remain embedded within them. There is always a moment, a quiet second before sleep, an unexpected pang of guilt, an encounter with someone who reflects back to them their own shortcomings where the illusion cracks. In those moments, the realization seeps in that beneath all the layers of concealment, the real self persists, unchanged by the facades that have been built around it. This is why the idea of an all-knowing force is so challenging. If such a force exists, then there is no possibility of deception, no room for pretending. Every thought, every motivation, every hidden impulse is laid bare. There are no justifications, no clever excuses, no masks to hide behind. There is only the unfiltered reality of who we are, inescapable and undeniable. This is what makes the idea of a God who knows our hearts so profound it strips away every illusion, forcing us to confront ourselves with an honesty that is otherwise impossible to achieve. If there exists a God who knows our hearts, then there is no escaping the reality of moral accountability. This is a concept that humanity has wrestled with for millennia because it is both necessary and deeply uncomfortable. People instinctively seek to avoid responsibility when it is burdensome, yet without accountability, there is no foundation for meaning or order. If nothing we do matters, if our actions have no weight, then life itself becomes arbitrary and chaos inevitably follows. But the moment we acknowledge a force that sees and judges the contents of our hearts, we are confronted with an unrelenting truth. Everything we do carries significance, whether we want it to or not. This understanding cuts through every attempt to justify moral failure. It renders excuses irrelevant. People often argue that circumstances dictate their actions, that they are shaped by forces beyond their control, that their choices are not truly their own. While it is undeniable that external factors play a role in shaping human behavior, they do not absolve individuals of responsibility. The knowledge of what is right remains present, even in the face of adversity. Conscience does not vanish simply because the world is difficult. The internal voice that whispers in moments of decision, that urges one toward truth and virtue, does not cease to exist just because it is inconvenient. Yet, accountability is an immense burden, and that is why so many resist it. It is far easier to shift blame, to externalize responsibility, to insist that morality itself is subjective and that no ultimate standard exists. But deep down, no one truly believes this. People do not act as though morality is arbitrary when they are the victims of wrongdoing. They do not accept betrayal, cruelty, or injustice with indifference when it is inflicted upon them. They instinctively appeal to higher principles demanding justice, fairness, and truth. This alone reveals that accountability is not merely a construct but an embedded reality. To accept that God knows our hearts is to accept that every action, every thought, and every intention is being measured against the highest possible standard. This realization carries profound implications. It means that lying to oneself is futile. It means that secret transgressions are not truly secret. It means that the weight of moral failure cannot simply be brushed aside. And it means that, whether acknowledged or not, every person is in a continual state of becoming, either moving toward alignment with truth or further into deception and destruction. This is why the concept of accountability is both necessary and terrifying. It means that no action is insignificant. It means that the things done in darkness matter just as much as those done in the light. It means that even when no other human being sees, there is still a reality in which everything is seen. And if that is true, then morality is not a matter of convenience, but of ultimate consequence. The choice is not whether to be accountable, but whether to accept the weight of that responsibility or to deny it at great cost. Every person is faced with a fundamental choice: to live in truth, however painful, or to embrace falsehood and self-deception. This is not a superficial decision, but the most significant struggle of human existence. Truth is demanding. It requires humility, sacrifice, and the willingness to confront aspects of oneself that are often uncomfortable. Falsehood, on the other hand, offers immediate relief, a temporary escape from the weight of responsibility. It promises an easier path, one where the difficult questions do not have to be answered, and where personal flaws can be ignored rather than addressed. But this path comes at a price, and that price is far greater than most realize. When people reject truth, they begin to construct an elaborate system of justifications for their actions. They tell themselves that their shortcomings are not their fault, that their failures are the result of circumstances beyond their control. They create narratives in which they are victims rather than agents of their own destiny. This process happens gradually, almost imperceptibly, as small compromises accumulate over time. A minor lie here, a rationalization there, and before long the distinction between reality and illusion becomes blurred. The person who once sought truth now finds comfort in falsehood, not because they do not know the difference, but because facing the truth would demand too much. This deception extends beyond the individual. Societies, too, are built upon either truth or falsehood. When truth is valued, institutions function with integrity, justice is upheld, and people are encouraged to take responsibility for their lives. But when falsehood is embraced, corruption takes root. Institutions become self-serving, justice becomes selective, and individuals are rewarded not for honesty and effort, but for manipulation and deceit. The consequences are predictable. Trust erodes, chaos emerges, and suffering spreads. People often assume that avoiding truth spares them from suffering, but this is an illusion. Suffering is an inevitable part of existence, and it is far worse when it arises from deception. A person who confronts reality, however painful, at least retains their integrity. They may struggle, but they remain grounded in what is real. Those who choose falsehood, however, eventually find themselves in a situation where the very foundation of their lives crumbles beneath them. The lies they have told themselves cease to hold up. The rationalizations no longer satisfy. The weight of accumulated deception becomes unbearable. At its core, this choice is a spiritual and psychological battle. It is not merely about telling the truth in the ordinary sense, but about orienting one's entire being toward reality. It is about resisting the temptation to construct a world of illusions, even when those illusions offer comfort. It is about understanding that, although truth is painful, it is the only path to genuine meaning and fulfillment. The alternative may provide temporary relief, but it leads to emptiness, despair, and ultimately self-destruction. Every person must make this choice, and whether consciously or not, they are making it every day with every decision they face. Be fully known is a daunting thought, but to be fully known and still loved is the foundation of hope. Human nature is deeply flawed, and every individual carries within them a history of failures, regrets, and weaknesses. The awareness of this imperfection often leads to a fear of exposure, People long for acceptance, but they are terrified that if others saw them as they truly are, they would be rejected. This fear drives much of human behavior. It leads to deception, both of oneself and of others. It leads to carefully curated images, to the suppression of vulnerabilities, to the relentless pursuit of external validation. But no matter how much effort is spent on hiding, the inner reality remains unchanged. The idea that there exists a being who sees all, who knows every hidden thought, every unspoken desire, every act of weakness or strength is difficult to comprehend. The natural instinct is to assume that such knowledge would result in condemnation. If every flaw is known, then surely rejection must follow. But this assumption is rooted in a misunderstanding of both judgment and mercy. Judgment is not simply punishment, it is the recognition of truth. And mercy is not the denial of justice, but the offering of a path toward redemption. To be known is not the same as being condemned. It is the opportunity to change, to grow, to become something more than one's past mistakes. Many people struggle with the burden of their own past. They carry guilt and shame that weigh them down, shaping their self-perception and limiting their potential. They believe that their failures define them, that the worst things they have done are the truest things about them. But if there is a God who knows their hearts completely and still offers them the chance to rise, then failure is not the final word. Sort of mistakes do not have to become identities. Redemption is possible, not because one's sins are ignored, but because they are acknowledged and can be overcome. This understanding changes everything. It removes the need for pretense. It eliminates the exhausting effort of maintaining a false self. It allows for true transformation because growth can only occur when reality is fully faced. The person who accepts that they are seen yet still given the opportunity to improve no longer has to be paralyzed by fear. They are free to confront their flaws without despair, to strive towards something higher without being crushed by the weight of their imperfections. This does not mean that the path is easy. The process of becoming better is painful. It requires the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, to take responsibility where it is easier to make excuses, to endure suffering rather than seek immediate escape. But it is precisely because one is fully known that this journey is possible. There is no need to run, no need to hide. The love that exists in spite of complete knowledge is the kind that does not simply accept as one is, but calls one to become who they were meant to be. Thanks for watching.